The fluorescent lights of Memorial Hospital's 6th floor flickered at 2:47 a.m. when Marcus Chen dropped to his knees beside the crumpled figure in the executive corridor, his hands already reaching for her wrist to find a pulse that wasn't there. For 8 years, Marcus had pushed his cleaning cart through these sterile hallways, invisible to the doctors and executives who barely registered his existence. Tonight, that invisibility shattered. The woman sprawled on the cold linoleum wasn't just any patient. Even unconscious, even with her designer suit rumpled and her face drained of color, Marcus recognized Victoria Ashford, the pharmaceutical billionaire whose face graced the covers of Fortune and Forbes, the woman whose company owned this very hospital. She wasn't breathing. Marcus's CPR training from his volunteer firefighter days kicked in before conscious thought caught up. 30 compressions, steady and firm. Check airway. Nothing lodged. He tilted her head back, pinched her nose, and sealed his mouth over hers, breathing life into lungs that had stopped working. Her lips were cold against his. "Come on," he whispered between compressions, sweat beading on his forehead. "You don't get to die on my floor. Not tonight." 2 breaths. 30 compressions. 2 breaths. His arms burned. Time stretched and compressed simultaneously, seconds feeling like hours, minutes evaporating like steam. Then, finally, she gasped. Her eyes flew open, wild and unfocused, and she coughed violently as air flooded back into her system. Marcus sat back on his heels, his entire body trembling with adrenaline. Victoria Ashford stared at him with the confused desperation of someone who'd just been yanked back from the edge of everything. "You're okay," Marcus said softly, pulling out his phone to call for help. "You're going to be okay now." Security and medical staff swarmed them within minutes. Victoria was rushed to the cardiac unit. Marcus gave his statement to a hospital administrator who looked at him like he'd somehow stepped out of his designated reality. By sunrise, he was back to mopping floors, the night's drama fading into the fluorescent hum of routine. He thought that would be the end of it. 3 days later, Marcus was eating his packed lunch, leftover spaghetti his 7-year-old daughter Emma had helped make, in the staff break room when 2 security guards appeared at the door. Behind them stood a woman in an impeccable gray suit, her expression unreadable. "Mr. Chen, Ms. Ashford would like to see you." Marcus's stomach dropped. In his experience, when powerful people summoned janitors, it rarely ended well. He followed them through corridors he'd cleaned 1,000 times, now seeing them through different eyes. They took him to the executive wing, to an office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Victoria Ashford stood with her back to the door, gazing out at the skyline. When she turned, Marcus was struck by how different she looked from that night, composed, formidable, alive. "Mr. Chen," she said, her voice carrying the weight of someone accustomed to being heard. "I've been told you saved my life. I just did what anyone would do, ma'am." "That's where you're wrong." She moved closer, studying him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. "Security footage shows 3 people walked past me before you arrived. A doctor, a nurse, and an orderly. They all thought I was sleeping. You didn't." Marcus shifted his weight. "You looked wrong. The way you were lying. I've seen enough emergencies to know the difference." Victoria's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "I had a severe allergic reaction to a medication I was testing. Anaphylaxis. My EpiPen malfunctioned. According to the cardiologist, another 2 minutes and the brain damage would have been irreversible." She paused. "You gave me back my life, Mr. Chen. I intend to return the favor." "That's not necessary. I've done my research." She gestured to a folder on her desk. Marcus Chen, 34 years old. Widower. Father to Emma Chen, 7 years old. You work 60-hour weeks between this hospital and a weekend janitorial job at the mall. Emma attends public school but you're saving for a better district. Your wife died 3 years ago from complications of diabetes because her insurance wouldn't cover the insulin she needed. Victoria's voice dropped. She was a patient at this hospital. The room seemed to tilt. Marcus gripped the back of a chair. Nobody had ever laid out his life like this, its struggles and failures catalogued by someone who'd probably never worried about rent. "Why are you telling me this?" His voice came out rougher than intended. "Because I understand grief," Victoria said quietly. "And because the system that failed your wife is the same system I've been fighting to change. My company develops medications, Mr. Chen, but our pricing model has been problematic. I've been trying to reform it from the inside, but the board fights me at every turn. She moved to her desk, pulled out a document. I want to offer you a position in my company. Director of Patient Advocacy. You'd work directly with me to ensure that what happened to your wife never happens to anyone else. Marcus laughed, the sound bitter. Ma'am, I have a GED and no college degree. I clean toilets for a living. You have something far more valuable, you understand what's at stake. You've lived inside the consequences of our failures. Victoria's eyes held his. I have plenty of Harvard MBAs who can quote policy. I need someone who knows what it means when a mother has to ration her insulin, when a father works himself to exhaustion trying to keep his daughter's world together. The salary would be $180,000 annually, with full benefits and a signing bonus sufficient to move to any school district you choose. The number hit Marcus like a physical blow. That was more than he made in 3 years combined. This is charity, he said, even as hope flared treacherously in his chest. This is survival, Victoria corrected. Mine and countless others. I nearly died because a defective medical device failed at the critical moment. How many other people are dying because medications they need are priced beyond reach? Because insurance companies prioritize profit over life. She extended her hand. Help me fix this system, Marcus. Not because you saved my life, but because we both know what it costs when the system fails. Marcus thought about Emma, about the way she never complained when dinner was mac and cheese for the third night in a row. He thought about his wife, about holding her hand as she slipped away because the medication that could have saved her cost more than their annual income. He thought about all the invisible people who moved through these hallways, the cleaners and orderlies and cafeteria workers whose names nobody knew but whose labor kept everything running. He shook Victoria's hand. I'll need time to train a replacement for my night shifts. I don't leave people hanging. Victoria smiled, really smiled, for the first time. That's exactly why you're the right person for this job. 6 months later, Marcus stood before the board of Ashford Pharmaceuticals, presenting a revolutionary pricing model that would cap insulin costs at $35 per month. Emma sat in the front row, wearing her best dress, watching her father with shining eyes. Victoria sat beside her, occasionally whispering explanations when the technical terms got confusing. The board approved the proposal. Within a year, 7 other pharmaceutical companies had adopted similar models. Within 2 years, Marcus had spearheaded initiatives that made life-saving medications accessible to millions who'd been priced out of survival. Some nights, Marcus still thought about that moment on the hospital floor, the split-second decision to stop, to check, to act. He'd given Victoria Ashford 2 minutes of CPR. She'd given him the chance to make sure nobody else's spouse, parent, or child would die the way his wife had. It turned out that saving a life could mean more than just breathing air back into lungs. Sometimes it meant giving someone the chance to breathe freely for the first time in years. And sometimes, if you were fortunate, saving someone else's life ended up saving your own.